beautiful people. It is time for our episode 2 of the SOMA Show, where I'll talk to fascinating people about creativity, inspiration, wellness, all the good stuff. Today we are going to have Ryan.larsh as our esteemed guest. And Ryan and I, we might go back a few lifetimes, actually only met a few years ago. And today we're going to talk to him. He's a lot of things, sound technician, musician, friend, the list goes on and on. But today, in order to keep some sort of a semblance of, focus, we decided to talk about the evolution during this COVID experience, what he's been up to during quarantine, what the creative process was like then. I've been really curious about how one drops into flow when they're in bands as a musician and songwriting process. So those are some of the things we covered. We had a really great time, and then we also afterwards recorded some music to go that you just heard in the intro. So it was a pretty productive morning. Help me welcome Ryan.larsh, episode number 2 of the SOMA Show. I'm glad you're with us. Ryan.
Good morning, Jennifer.
This is Ryan.larsh. This is episode 2 of the SOMA Show podcast. I made you a special drink. This is going to be one of my awesome rituals for the podcast, is that people have to get to drink.
One of your potions, one of your magic potions.
That they drink one of my potions.
Magic elixirs.
Out of a cup that I choose.
Mm-hmm.
It has been washed. It doesn't look like it.
All right. This is the one deemed.
This is the one that I thought best suited.
Best for me.
For you. You can't break it. It's got a lid, so
that's
you can't
good.
Spill it.
Yeah, it's good. Because I have a tendency to, break
and
things.
What's in it is highly nutritious, yet not altogether psychedelic.
Well, cheers.
Cheers. Thank you for being here. I've already done the intro, so you didn't blush. I should let our viewers know that Ryan and I sometimes fire at a different pace, and I noticed that I can talk super fast and want to get to the point.
Sure.
And you're extremely thoughtful, and sometimes
I've got that Mark Twain. I like to call it that Mark Twain thing, spinning. Where it's just you just kind of really thought, let the perfect words kind of rise to the surface instead of just grabbing stuff.
I know.
But then again, I think it's just my brain. I've fallen on my head a lot.
Too many years of
skateboarding, snowboarding, a couple concussions. Can do that, I think. Slow you down a little bit.
Your drink has cocaine and mine has ketamine.
Oh, fantastic.
And we'll all even out.
All right. And hopefully no one from work is watching.
Oh, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so it's this will be amazing. So Ryan and I have known each other forever. I'm not going to talk about that in this episode because there's too much that I'm curious about and think our listeners are curious about with regards to your creative process.
Sure.
The things that you're doing, the evolution during this, I guess I'm just calling the COVID experience. Mm-hmm. And there was something else. I have 3 things written down. Evolution. Oh, and group flow. We got to start with that one. So
during the pander, which we haven't, that's one thing, group flow, obviously with the pandemic, we haven't gotten together with our groups or our bandmates and things as much as we used to. So it's definitely a little, a degree of separation through technology. Mm-hmm. But I mean, technology has advanced so much these days, you can still somewhat pick those things up, but I think that, for me, group flow was really kind of dependent on, how things feel. Mm-hmm. I really try to pick up, the room with my bandmates, where they're at. Is there anything specific that you're thinking of with it?
I think there's I guess I'll just ask 5 questions and let you run with it. But
sure.
So when it comes to group flow, I'm fascinated with it, of course, because I love to be in groups and can drop in those situations when there's dance and when there's maybe the same music or the same substances or the same vibe in nature, whatever. My work is pretty much solo.
Sure.
So it's just up to me to get into my flow,
Right,
and I have
right.
no tricks for that. So the biggest question to me, and maybe this is why so many bands, face addiction or fight amongst themselves, but you're longeverous and successful. So in general, what would be the ways that you, right now you're in 2 bands, right? So how do you get in that group flow? And then like piggyback on that question would be,
Sure.
Is there a leader, or do different parts of the organism take leadership in different ways? I know like the Navy SEALs, yes, there's, you get
Right.
your orders, but it depends on the organism. Everyone is the leader, taking turns, and maybe that's a band thing. So
Sure.
that group flow, I know, probably once you get on stage is amazing, yet you have to get into it during practice and stuff. So what's your personal process, and maybe the band process?
Okay. On stage there's definitely a different, than going in and the actual songwriting process, obviously. In practice, or when we're writing new music, a lot of times what I do with the 2 bands that I'm in, with Panic on Panic and Size 5s, we have one who is kind of the founder of Size 5s, and you have Greg, who is the, basically the brainchild or founder of Panic on Panic.
Okay.
And through different circumstances, we've been brought together, I feel, and I tend to take what they offer, which is an incredible amount of talent and creativity that just emulates through their musicianship and their playing. Both of them have been doing that for quite some time, and I think for me it's recognizing what they do that is their signature. Which is what is their creative, like what is that one particular thing, whether it be a kind of a mood, a feeling, a particular strum pattern, something that's like signature, the essence, of what they're, and for me is being able to read that as best as I can, and basically accompanying that,
So
just being
you tap into that, what you see makes that special.
Right.
And then
absolutely.
You're getting in the stream.
Yes, that's what I try to do personally with, working with an artist such as that, those guys. And then the other band members, of course we all have to have this synergy and feed off of each other. But for me personally, a lot of, the group flow and stuff comes from, emulates from, they're kind of like the source. I almost insist on them laying the foundations for the new songs. I have obviously lots of ideas of my own, and can create things independently. But when it comes to a band, I think that's what part of the contract, or part of the agreement, the unwritten agreement with a band is that you're working together, you're, like I said, you're co-creating at that point, and, trying to just accentuate, what they're doing and help, expand on that. And
so you kind of see it as the bigger picture, and this is how this particular organism, if a band was an organism, can succeed or rise to its greatest potential.
Exactly. Like what's going to make it, what is going to separate it from other bands, or what is going to be ultimately, its personality, as a whole brand of sorts, and try to maintain that, as much as possible. I feel like that I've kind of been blessed in a way with that. It took me a long time to figure that out throughout my life.
Maturity has helped with that, do you think? Like
Yeah.
to recognize and not.
Absolutely. Just a lot of factors, but I think that a lot of artists, we do, we're open. Our channels are a little bit more open than the average, person, and I think that's kind of what compels us to do the art. Is just that, like, we're just picking up like all these sensations and maybe a little bit more intensely,
Right.
Or clearly than other people. But when you're younger, it's hard to process that. You don't know that, because you're just growing up in, the normal world of sorts, and like growing into that, is a journey. It's absolutely a journey.
And it's pretty cool. The cream rises to the top, obviously, but then I think there's the longevity of things, and that's where there's a lot of bands, there's a lot of musicians that can play solo because you don't have to interact as much. There's that ease, but also like maturing or people just kind of getting crusty, maybe, or
Sure.
So I think, this is my perception, is that because you've evolved over time, and you're still not yet to middle age, but
That's debatable.
no, I insist, because I think we're about the same age. I insist. There's this, I don't know if you've noticed it. I've noticed it. A lot of people, I can't judge age anymore. Not that I ever really could, but it seems that a lot of times the musicians or the people that stay alive in some way stay dynamic, keep putting themselves out there. It can be in real estate, it can be as a doctor's, but the staying relevant, where it takes energy. A lot of people start maybe just staying at home or being comfortable, and I don't see you doing that. I see you, hitting it, staying fresh and staying in that flow.
Yeah, it's like trying to stay fluid, absolutely. And that's it, like somewhat relevant, and stay relevant, to the public and to the audience. Unfortunately, that's something as an artist. Ultimately we create for ourselves to a certain degree, but also, we're kind of dependent on an audience, of fans of our art or our work, and things like that. So when it comes to the flow with, other members, it's not always there with everybody too. I've been in a lot of, like right now, I'm very fortunate because of the group of people, my bandmates at this time. I've been in several bands throughout the years. And the ones that work, click. You have this synergy, and you have this almost, there's moments where, you kind of lose yourself. And, I call it the we brain, or the we think. It's just all of a sudden, there's moments of, it's almost just bliss.
You can't go wrong.
Where, it's like everybody's just all hitting, firing on all pistons, and it seems like you're sharing like the same, like self, or, you've become one at that moment. And, the next chord or the next note or the next, beat or whatever it is, you can just like out of the blue, like everybody in the group will just change, to a bridge or like a verse or a chorus type, a riff or composition, all at the same time. And when those kind of things happen, it's incredible, and with the groups that I'm in right now, that's very prevalent. It happens a lot, which is great. Sometimes songs can take a little bit more thought, and a little bit more technical, composition and writing, but sometimes you just get in that room together and it just all clicks, and it's an incredible experience, It really is. It's terrific, and it's something that you always strive, I strive for that with the bands. I've played on my own, a lot throughout the years, and I, after a while, because it was hard for me to get together with people, raising a daughter and stuff like that, and work, so I kind of decided to learn how to play and sing and write my own compositions completely, which, ultimately I think helped me down the road working with other people, and achieving flow, because now I can understand the songwriter's position a little bit more, or learning how to play bass, in another band. Now I can put myself in the bass player's shoes a little bit better and speak with him more on a that language.
So speaking the same language, that's something that you've taken upon yourself. I've noticed you seem to walk the right line of empathy too, wanting the greater good. Would you say, because not all of us are super talented musicians, and I'm always wondering, how can we take something that works really well for you and translate it? Are there days where, and I'm sure because you have practice at this, but are there days where, or methods you use where, at the door to the practice room, let's say, you do a certain ritual, or there are certain things that you just insist on that you do or think, or is there, or maybe you've never thought about it
I'm
before.
Always flying by the seat of my pants, honestly.
So just don't think about it, just
I want to, honestly, that's it, the clean slate, just, clear my, I try not to premeditate, you know what I mean, think about what's going to happen too much. There's a writer, artist, Henry Miller, who I saw I don't know, it's like PBS or something like that, and I saw some documentary on him, and for me there was something that he said that really spoke to me, which was when it comes to art, like drawing for him, or painting or something like that, or even writing, he was a writer, several books, and it was just his thought process was basically just putting the pen to the paper,
starting,
and seeing what happens next. And a lot of times I kind of like to take that approach. I'd like to say that I had some really profound,
well, it gets in the way
almost
sometimes,
discipline, some ritual or something like that to do it. But honestly, it's I feel like the less I can think about something, the more clear my mind can be.
Right.
And maybe that's something that I have developed over, over time, is just being able to drop whatever, just be in the moment. I guess
so
a lot of that.
When you murder me, we'll be able to say certainly it was not premeditated.
Right.
It was just spontaneous. No, and I think that's the interview today. Maybe if we think about it too much, what really, maybe there's an outline kind of in your head.
Sure.
There's going to be a practice.
Right. Well, that's it. You don't want things. I think that people, even subconsciously, that they can pick up things if it's kind of contrived, or if it's been, we've practiced this a little bit, you know what I mean, or it's scripted, I guess you would say, because obviously with bands it's you have to practice the song over and over, to perform
the script is the song,
it. Right.
So if the rest of it's just kind of
but a lot of it comes to the actual, just that moment of creation, and then if you can harness or maintain that, just that real spark, or that raw, fruit or vegetable, you're going to get the most out of it.
Right.
Instead of just baking, and cooking and processing, all the good stuff out of it, you know what I mean? So it's almost my metaphor is it would be like a seed, you're planting a seed when you get together, and you grow this song, or this piece of art, or a painting, or something like that,
And the mistakes, would you say, is even if you make them, is probably where you would grow and at least get better.
Absolutely. Yeah,
that's the improvisation part.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to be okay with making mistakes, and I think that's something that comes with experience also. We're so critical of ours. I think it's human, as artists too, we're our own worst critics kind of thing, and I think that it can really paralyze someone or cripple them to an extent where they have, this amazing thing to offer, but it never comes to fruition because
they're paralyzed.
They're too afraid of that, of making a mistake or failure. But really, failure is just it's a concept. You know what I mean? It's an idea that we have that we associate with a feeling that like maybe something didn't work out the way that we thought it was supposed to. Because we have this preconceived notion of like this is the outcome I want, so we didn't achieve that. And it's like, oh, I failed.
When in fact it could be better.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you could have learned something through that, like, that sparks actually, a final, outcome or product that's even better than the one you originally imagined, because you went through that process.
Is that why I learned so much?
Was it? You make that many mistakes?
I thought I made a mistake once, but I was wrong.
Yeah, we were wrong about that, of course.
I was wrong about that one. So before you mentioned, there have been times like when you had your daughter where you did kind of go into a more solo mode, which has obviously, everything, there's a fruit to everything, like you said. There's I've noticed life is a wave, right? There are different, if we can like take the highs and the lows or the busy times and maybe the more
ebbs
solo
and flows,
times, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So that happened with your daughter, and of course now I'll talk about the ebb that we all had, which was the COVID experience. Would you walk us through, because for everyone it was the same but very different.
Sure.
So can you walk us through that? I think it's kind of like a birth, but I happened to be with you, I think, on the night that this started. Right. So walk us. Yeah, we were
at going 100 miles an hour off that cliff, pretty much. Up until that point. Well, and that's the thing. Obviously, because we were collaborating, on that EP release. There's this ramping up of energy and getting things ready, getting the EP done, right, and all this stuff, and then your visual or the VJ debut was awesome. So I was like, first time getting you kind of prepared. So there's just like so much going on that was just like all this like hyper focus, on creating this experience, and like I said, like the years of playing these songs and the year of being in the studio, mixing and mastering and all these different things, and then getting to Cactus Club that night, and then as it was here we're just dialed into this thing, and then the world is just like kind of like everything's crumbling, crumbling around, as there's more news coming in.
Friday the 13th, by the way.
Yeah,
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. Panic on panics. EP release party at the Cactus Club, and I built that screen, and it's like all these like mixed emotions of accomplishment and just this yearning, like eagerness to for what the future was going to hold, after this kind of milestone for us, and to
paint a picture for everyone. This band was so dialed in, and they were on fire, and literally the visuals were fire, bombs, things breaking.
Amazing.
And
that was great.
I think for those few minutes we left what was happening behind, because this is when things were closing down. People all of a sudden had hand sanitizer, didn't know if they should touch each other. So it was this weird catastrophe masterpiece. Yeah, there's this conflict of like, we want to celebrate this, but there's confusion. We don't know exactly what we should be doing, right now. It's like, should we be hugging? We shouldn't be hugging each other, but I want to hug you so much because this is probably the last time we're going to be able to do this. Yeah. Which, in fact, ended up being the case. It was the last show at Cactus Club. So, not knowing that exactly, we had, I thought, was just a phenomenal, evening. Experience, from the first two bands and to our performance,
it's just an incredible release, this amazing thing where, like I said, at a moment, none of that existed, the impending doom of
little did we know.
The pandemic and barrage of misinformation and who knows what was to come. But we did that, and then I had another show, well, 2 more shows that weekend, 2 size 5s, which was on Saturday at X-Ray Arcade. And that was another one where it was just like, well, what's going to go on, or should we go through with the show or not? We had some very good friends of ours in town from San Diego, Some Kind of Nightmare, so they were in town, and we were supposed to play with them, and we were just like, let's make this happen, as long as the owners are okay with it, let's do it. And so we had that, and it was the same kind of environment where a lot of people showed up, kind of under the assumption that this was probably going to be it, for a while. The writing was kind of on the wall. So every day it just like kept, compounding, like, exponentially, it seemed like. And, so we did that on Saturday at X-Ray, which ended up being their last live show also. So apparently I was like I closed down the Cactus Club, I closed down X-Ray Arcade. Yeah. And I think on Sunday, we were in Kenosha at a place called Hat Tricks, and I think that was probably the last show there. So, yeah.
Like, quit inviting Ryan.
Yeah, right. So, am I the harbinger of doom?
Yeah, pretty much, I guess.
And I think this ray of shining light, but really, no, it's like this dark angel of death.
Angel of death, smiling death, but still death. So, yeah, things, obviously, we didn't know how long they were going to last. And maybe it'd be cool to look at, like, how did the 2 bands, because that was Panic on Panic, but how did you move through that with people? Once again, you're a group, you can't just make decisions on your own.
Right.
And so what was the interim like?
Yeah, there was a lot of, a lot of text messaging and, checking in with each other. How do you feel about this? Where are we at?
Right.
What's your level? What's your stress level? Are you, at the point where it's like you want to just pull out? Obviously we have to respect that.
I was going to say respect would probably have to be one of the key.
Yeah, you have to consider where other people are at emotionally, mentally, with, trying to process, what the information that was at hand, and make the safest and, best decisions as possible. Right. And it was very similar between both, with both bands, actually. I think that the people that I've, come together with to, create music in these bands, I think there's a very mutual, considerate and respect, amongst each other, even that, not that we're exactly the same by any means, very different characters in a lot of ways, but, I think that's the thing, too, that's drawn us together, is that we have, this common thread,
magnetize each other. And it's small walkie, too. I mean,
right.
Who wants to work with a difficult down?
Yeah. And, we got through the shows, and then everything immediately was locked down. So like I said, we were going like 1,000 miles an hour, at that point. And we thought, well, really, it was kind of a launch pad for Panic. We just lit the burners on that rocket by doing the EP, and all of a sudden we're just adrift in space. Like, right. Where do we land? Where do we go from here? It's like our trajectory, what we thought. We had a bunch of shows lined up, already, the months ahead. We're already looking at Summerfest, and we were looking at, a couple other shows with some bands that we were going to be opening up for. And, we almost had our 2020 plan, was coming together. And all of a sudden it was like that rug just got taken out out from underneath our feet, and we couldn't even really get together safely from what we knew, from what we could tell. So we just kind of sat back, put things on the back burner, and just try to assess the situation. I think it's like anytime, like if you've ever been in like an accident or something like that, and next thing you know, your car is on the other side of the road or something, kind of major like trauma happens. It's like you kind of get out and you assess the situation, you know what I mean? You just go into investigate, a different mode, where it's like, okay.
Well, I suppose that's your family, so there's probably a lot of checking in. Are you okay? Are you okay?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. As time went on, for sure, because a lot of the members are in the service industry, working, as bartenders, or servers and things like that, and all of us were just like, well, what's our, beyond the band, obviously. So it kind of had to take the bands themselves, kind of had to went on the back burner, took a back seat to just our basic survival mode,
health and safety.
And hey, you're not working now, are you doing okay? Are you getting by? Are you going, but at the same time, so you're trying to reach out as much as possible, and you're trying to also take care of yourself, in this new situation, that I don't think any of us really saw coming this day and age, I mean, sure, back when people were, settling the country and on covered wagons and stuff, and were dying of dysentery and like just strange stuff like that. That was pretty more common then. Even we don't see, we haven't had like any kind of strange diseases recently, or like polio, or stuff like measles or anything like that hit us.
Certainly not the commonality of it. I mean, I think that's what was pretty amazing, and I know we all had hopes for that too. That were dashed pretty soon after, because everything just kept dividing, and then there were the race, the riots, the tension, the injustice that added to it. What did you? So I know somewhere in there you moved, right, locations, but then what did you do to kind of keep your sanity, your, not that we even wanted to be normal, we're not even supposed to use that word anymore, but your normalcy, your sense of humor. And I think in order for you and I and most people to have a sense of humor, is we have to be creative.
Sure.
And sometimes social and centered in self. So, like, how did you keep that pot stirred? How did you?
Yeah, I think you said it there, we had to kind of like, look at ourselves, and kind of think about, what do we need to kind of serve ourselves, do we, and how much we want to nurture, or how much we wanted to do to maintain that self up until that point. I mean, kind of to a certain degree, I think we do that every day. Are we just, and that's what you say, staying in flow or being fluid is every day. We kind of have a conscious decision as to whether or not we're going to, continue to maintain and preserve the self that we are, or if we're going to continue to, develop it or grow or try new things, And, you were saying earlier, like when my daughter was born, I was really like anti-technology, and I kind of allude at, not that I was running around smashing, everybody's computers and phones and stuff, but I was not interested in it.
Yeah.
I didn't really, I was like, I was one of those persons.
And now you're helping me figure my shit out.
Right, and I was like, I bring in like a truckload of gear, like, hey, check out, I'm going to show you how to make a home studio.
Let's go to the wide screen here. So I said, hey, we're doing the interview today. Bring your gear, just your laptop, because we need let's make a quick intro, because now he's doing
gear and
music.
laptop.
So he said, I said gear. My bad with the gear, because he's in two bands.
Right.
basically have a production company and work with a sound company.
Sure.
So he brought only like 20 things to the back door, which I thought would be great for props. So anyway, my bad. Continue.
So
I don't even know. Oh, we were talking about in this.
Oh, the
sort of
technology,
like
yes, yeah. So, staying fluid, staying in flow or relevant, so having my daughter, different perspectives, like, well, she's going to be going to school, technology is going to be a thing. We're not going to, it's not just going to go away.
So originally it was your daughter. It's like I have to, it's another way of being relevant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I knew that she was
language.
going to be, growing up in a world where there was, technology was going to be a major instrument, almost an essential one, which it basically has become, an integral, a part of it. And, we're almost like pre-cyborg type,
Totally, yeah.
We always got our phones and stuff on us now. But so I bought a laptop, and so I started navigating, learning how to use software, how things work. And, it's always been just that kind of continuous, process where it's like, well, here's this new thing, like I could ignore it or, just try to, just continue to live my life without it the way it is, or I could kind of embrace it. And see if, and it's come a long way, obviously. At this point, technology to me is amazing, like software instruments or digital, sounds, that aren't coming from a guitar, or analog, sound, very much like, the actual thing,
right,
to a certain degree, that reproduction of those, of traditional instruments, drums, percussion, you name it, have come a long way since the early Casio keyboards and stuff, which is still fun,
right.
Still love, like now, like you can go back to those sounds, for some nostalgic type,
absolutely,
compositions and things like that, but, continuing to develop it, which happened with, that was a big part of, okay, well now I've got no studio space to really go to, no band that I can really get together with, spending a lot of time at home. What better way to do it than
good time to learn something.
Yeah, than building that little home studio that I've always thought about doing, So, I've always got I feel like a list a mile long of things that I should try that if I have the time.
Well, suddenly we all have the time, right?
Yeah.
Now I know in this period, this maybe beginning of COVID, this is happening. This is going to take a while. You're doing your home studio. You had already in the past, and I had I think tapped into your knowledge base too with what. Not that I was ever at all against it, just never really knew how to utilize social media. And you had already done a good job. I think you kind of took that on maybe for one or both of the bands a bit, although I think you all were pretty good at it. But kind of cultivating that, and now all of a sudden, that is our number one way of sharing.
Sure.
So I know I truly appreciated learning from your experience, but how in this middle time, so now you have the technology, how did that help you feel you're evolving or staying connected, or
with the technology
and the social media?
Well, and there's so many different perspectives on it from other people, but I think for us as a band, we recognized it, for the useful tool that it could be right away.
Were you a MySpace person?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
that was big for bands, right?
And well, that's it. I think, well, not just for bands, but it's funny, and I was seeing a meme that was basically like, this can't be the same brain that I used on MySpace because we're writing code. You could actually, like with MySpace, if you got into it, you could use code and set up your backgrounds and stuff. I don't know if I'm sure some people remember this, but it's too bad that it turned into a kind of a joke, and that Facebook really just all of a sudden everybody on MySpace is like, hey, have you tried Facebook yet?
So MySpace, you really had to do a lot of the work yourself.
You could, yeah. It was definitely an option, whereas on Facebook you can't really customize your your page or your profile as much. I mean, you can put up your pictures and this and that, but the format's it's just there. Okay. And whereas like with MySpace, you can do a lot more things with it. With Size 5's coming together, and a lot of that was one also. He likes to take lots of pictures, very visual, so very visual. Right. So, it's like, all right, well, here's this format, this social media, and you can create these, event pages or whatever, boom, and it's just like, next thing you know, it's like every, couple hours we're putting out, hey, we're playing again.
Your logarithms are perfect for you and Juan, right?
Yeah. It was pretty ridiculous. I'm sure some people blocked us after a while.
I doubt that. Well, what I'm noticing is it's all content, right? If it's enjoyable content, and
that was it. For us, it was not just this come see our band. We're always we're kind of some comedians of sort, yeah. We like jokes. We like jokes, and I think we're not too proud to make a fool of ourselves a little bit here and there for the sake of a laugh.
You're not too proud for your monster slippers over there.
Well, I did try them on. This is my feet get hot.
Your feet get hot. I'm always cold, but always hot.
So. Making it entertaining.
Right.
That was the thing. Yeah, absolutely. It's great for people who enjoy entertainment. Being creative in that way. Obviously, a lot of people I think do it for ego-centric more. But I think once again, the people that I've connected with at this point, are very, much more about the community and not so motivated, just driven by their egos and selves. So it's like we obtain some of the most pure forms of happiness by making other people feel good or happy or laugh. It's
a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, it's such a huge reward. To do that. But with like anything, it can be. I can see how Facebook, how it can be. Addictive, and which was just like with anything, it can go bad. You can just get sucked into that thing, and now it's not a positive or a productive, or now it's taking away. Now it becomes a problem.
You're posting in the middle of a show.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the middle of the song, hang on, everybody.
Yeah, hold on. This is good. Healthy. What? Okay, so.
Which can have, some.
If it's
some yeah, right. Right. Some people might get a kick out of that.
I'm sure. What, was there a point during all this where you felt like, okay, either I'm depressed, I'm worried about someone, this is driving me totally crazy. When is the end of this?
No.
You're pretty busy.
Not completely. I do miss after a few months, then I started to really kind of miss, the social my and my friends a little bit more, because I did go from a point of, being constantly around, my bandmates and our friends and fans and family to, this kind of void. But, I think we all had our pods, a lot of us had our pods and things like that, we're kind of checking in on each other. I knew they were there and I felt good, I didn't have, I didn't lose work, I was constantly employed through the whole thing, and, there was some concerns about income, but it wasn't ever, an issue where it's like, oh, am I going to be able to pay for, the rent? Am I going to be able to afford, my bills and stuff like that? Where, as I have friends that, that were having problems with that, and so, and venues and things like that, and people who have, had to shut down or this or that. And unfortunately, there's not a whole, I'm not independently wealthy, so there's nothing I could do to personally save them, but, just try to be there,
Well, that's a huge deal. I mean, you kept putting good energy out there, and I know there are times you have to kind of disappear.
Right.
But then if you can...
Yeah.
Just knowing that we're out there,
yeah.
I think is a big part of it during...
And there's also, I don't know if you felt like, for me, there's also like a little bit of a conflict, like, it's like I wanted to continue to, create music and be creative, but I didn't want to be like, hey, look at me right now, I thought it was, I felt like that would be almost too selfish at a point, to like say, because I wasn't really struggling, like check out, buy my t-shirts, or, continue to buy our CDs or this or that. I mean, I suppose now looking back at it, I probably could have, but it didn't feel right, so just kind of, like I said, went with the flow, even though we were kind of like you said, we were kind of in the ebb of that. And so I just kind of float around, tread some water, and I said, reassess my surroundings and try to figure out what the best course, would be downstream or upstream or whatever at that point.
So do you feel, I mean, I think it's hard not to feel a reemergence or like a thinning of the veil, or like a light at the end of the tunnel now with spring and with the vaccines, and what has been happening in your musical world with shows, and how are you going to reemerge, and what's going on with that? Share with us what you think that's going to look like,
Well, I think the general consensus is that when things really open up again, that people are just going to come out in droves. Once there's a real feeling of safety and security. And that'll be great. I think that'll be great. I think that unfortunately what we've seen, is a lot of people really need that. There's people that need that social interaction more than others, and just to help, to sleep at night, to get by, for their mental health. I think isolation for a lot of people has been, very difficult, having to do that, for a lot of people. I'm lucky enough that I feel like I'm not one of them, and I through that. And that's so I kind of changed gears with, playing out more aggressive, punk and rock and roll type music that I'm more known for, and kind of trying to delve into more of the calming and, more meditative and, like the ambient, type music and things like that, which obviously you were, a big part of, kind of giving me a canvas and asking me to do that. I'm very grateful for that, because that was something that I've always thought of as like these more elaborate compositions that are almost like orchestral in ways. And with technology coming as far as it has, and certain programs being much more affordable than it used to be to a certain degree, I'm able to produce, things that kind of cater to some of my previous, like, other interests as far as music goes, with, like the neurology, of it. And now, if you look around, what you can see, like the frequencies, a lot of the things that you've been curious about, and what I think you originally basically kind of reached out to me, to talk about or think about was, the shape of sounds, the color of sounds, the frequencies of sounds, right?
Yeah, originally we had, Ryan and I got to know each other, kindred spirits obviously, but yeah, that was one of the original things was, the visual art. and then the auditory art, and the combination of those two things are sonic geometry, pretty much, which is being able to see musical patterns, and because everything's frequency, light is, waves, sound is waves, texture, everything, just has different frequencies. So from there, things evolved, and so it's really cool. It's horrible that it happened, but it's really cool that, in this time, we've actually, in a way, come, not full circle, but kind of like cycled now to the point where it's like, oh, well, there is time to start looking at these things that we want to do. But because of the busyness and franticness of life, and being in our own arts, now, I mean, it's a combination. So
sure.
It's
yeah.
definitely been interesting.
It is. Trying to, take a visual and determine what that sounds like, what kind of a sound that would have. It's been it's been a little bit challenging, but it to me it's just been fascinating, really, to take my mind to that new space, to do that, or try to,
well, I think you succeed in the show notes, as people say. I'll put the soundtrack that Ryan made for this Chrysalis experience of COVID, and I did some art, and Ryan did the soundtrack, and it's like you really feel the progression of life. You did.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was, once again, I didn't really have, the creative process. I didn't really have, and I had somewhat of an idea, but really what happened is I sat down and I just started, going through a catalog of sounds and things like that, and let it kind of write itself in a way. Once I had your visuals in the background, I just had those kind of repeating, and then, I would go through the catalog of like synth sounds and things like that, and different frequencies, and if it spoke to me, if it seemed to align, if they seemed to match, I was like, all right, I'd write that, make a note of that, and see if I can incorporate that. And you did a fantastic job in your recording studio, and
my closet,
and with the bowl and the and the waves and everything like that, and to have that as the base, and then it just kind of occurred to me, and just kind of, like I said, it almost wrote itself to a certain degree, and. It was fun, and I'm looking forward to doing more of that, because I've always been really
because after this interview, I have a few ideas.
Interested in how, music affects, like I say, music, soothes the savage beast. I mean, that's been a saying for who knows how long. So obviously people have known there's a correlation between, sounds and music and emotions and moods and things like that.
Absolutely.
And now with, the advancements in technology, we can basically plug a person in by putting, electrodes on them and see how that does change their physiology to a certain degree, and creates new connections,
Well, and I know I use music as a tool every day, almost all day. Like when you first got here, I had, the music I had on. I needed to be firing and doing all these things and getting ready. And then when we started this, I realized, calm the F down. Let's put on, this soothing with some fruit. Yeah, I made us breathe together. It's just like, okay, let's drop in to get into flow, right? So I know if I'm working on a piece and it needs to be fast and furious and paint's drying, then you put on that. It's just like medicine, you know? And then there are times where, it needs to be soothing. It needs to be introspective, and it's kind of cool as you're talking about your process. I know you told me what it was, but I'm really hearing it for the first time. It's the opposite. I mean, obviously, of what I did for that show. where it's like I'm listening to the music with my eyes closed, and what am I seeing?
Sure.
I'm seeing planes crashing and bombs going off and waves, and that's the footage I went out and got, because it's like what matches that, and then matching up each song. Do you find that, and it sounds like you do, that's what I'm gleaning from all this. It's like if there is a band member, or if there is, a certain construct, and I think it's maybe called box theory, or if there is a certain rhythm you're moving with, or art that you're looking at, do you find yourself more creative, more easy? Like, is it easier to, like, I guess it is. You walk into a room, you're like, all right, let's go. Instead of just having everything in the world available, to having some parameters. Yeah,
box theory is something I've heard you mention before. I wasn't really familiar with it, but of apply. But it's great. I think it has some very reasonable applications. Because through a lot of my life, because I like all sorts of music. When I write myself, I tend to just meander all over the place. I can make a rock and roll, a punk riff, or like a classical piece, or this or that. So like I said, like the box theory, just like having parameters, like this is what it is. And I think maybe that's I can apply that to my approach with the bands, and with like designating Greg or Juan as that that this is where their space is. This is what music sounds like when I'm writing with them, when I'm creating with them, or co-creating with them, and that helps me be more productive that way. I can direct it in those positions. And then the same, and working with you, with having a picture, it creates, kind of this framework, or like a grid of sorts, or like a foundation,
It's the genesis, right?
Yeah,
right.
It's a canvas or a palette, of sorts, but it already has, artwork, or like if Juan writes something, or any musician writes, because I can sit down and work with other artists, and I kind of go in there without any real expectations, and then it's like, all right, what have you got there? And it's like, okay, I can just kind of hear things that aren't there already, once they start playing, like you said, you can see things that through the sounds, and that ability, I think has made me useful to lack
of like. It's all about being useful, right?
It's giving me some worth.
It's giving me some value, some longevity. Well, I think when we're not, and I don't want to place my struggles on you, but focus, right? Without focus, because I think it is important to have those days or months where we can free flow, try new things, maybe take something on the list and kind of play with it in just a general open way and see what happens. And then there are times where I know I feel almost frantic because there's too many things. So to have something that narrows it down a bit, like, just walking into your practice room and like, okay, now this is my focus. It's actually being present, and that's what we keep hearing about, right?
Right.
Like
absolutely.
All anxiety comes from referring to the past or trying to predict the future.
Yeah.
When really this is it right now. And I've noticed you tend to be, I think when we're together and when we're with people or working on a certain project, we give them that ourselves too, that respect. This time is this capsule. So maybe it's about compartmentalizing life too.
Sure.
But it allows us to have focus. And
because the thoughts, it's like, herding cats or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like you need to like reel those, find a way to, a certain amount of discipline. That's the thing is, as we've gotten older and experienced
More
things.
mature.
Yeah, more mature. Okay. As the years have passed, as we've, done our laps around the sun,
Right.
we realize certain things, that work better, and obviously recognizing the fact that our thoughts can tend to get away from us or overwhelm us. Having some kind of disciplinary, thing like breathing, or listening to certain music can, like I said, tone those, like bring those things in a little bit, and help us focus. Otherwise, it's like, it's kind of odd how it's like the more thought, the less productive you can become.
Absolutely.
If you just let the thoughts run wild and stuff.
Right. And it does come down, I think life does come down to efficiency sometimes, where if we can focus on these 5 things in their own compartments, we're actually going to get them all done faster than if we were thinking about all 5 all at once.
Well, like I said, like setting, I think you said this at one point too, like setting a deadline, making a deadline for yourself, in the past it's like with the bands, music, it's like, all right, well, let's book a show. Yeah, we don't have a set ready yet, but if we book this show, we have to,
Amen. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then stuff gets done,
Well, and maybe that's one of the sides of the box,
Right.
We're talking about parameters. It's like, if we, that is key. That was key for that show. Anything we do, really, there has to be it's not an end, it's a point on your tree or whatever. Like, this is the point that we finish whatever incarnation that is, and it'll change.
Sure.
But no, I definitely agree. And you deal with that as a musician all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, because it can just meander, and just fractal. We love fractals.
Right.
Say geometry and all these things. You can just go down like all these, wormholes or whatever. But and that's the thing. It's to be productive. If being productive is your end goal, some people it's not. Some people just like to be adrift, and just kind of bop around on that lazy river.
As the owner of a new sailboat, you may want to be adrift sometime.
Right.
But still have, I guess, direction or know where a port is at some point.
Yeah, you gotta have a place that you gotta moor it. You gotta have a anchor.
Well,
possibly
and that's
once in a while.
Perfect metaphor for what you were saying before, which is as long as you can come back to center and not be scattered, you can kind of shoot off in every direction. One thing I'm really curious about is how do you, and I know each band is different, but run through for me how, because once again, I'm mostly solo, and I'll contract out certain things and certainly work with some great, super talented people, but in a band, we in the audience hear a song. And someone had to write it, someone had to write the music. What is the process? Let's just pick a band, and what is the process you guys go through beginning to end?
For the songs?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that whole creation process. I know. I listen to how Tool does their songs. It's very different sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Some people buy lyrics. And,
Well, and that's those like Tool as an example is a very I'm sure it's an extremely different process than my process. Because they're writing these 45 minutes, these giant pieces together of sorts. So for them, it's almost like it's a puzzle,
Right.
and almost like it's very calculated, almost mathematical, in a way. And for us, a lot of it is because we're doing it. Our motivation, we're doing it for fun. So we try not to make it too complicated. A lot of times, we have these ideas. A lot of times, what inspires us is what's going on currently. But a lot of times, when people are listening to music, they don't really want to. Sometimes they want to rage about that. They want to be upset about that. Sometimes they're trying to escape that. Right now we've been writing more about universal themes. They're just like the connectivity of the human experiences, things that tie us all together in a way. We try to focus on things, just what more people can relate to in a way. So once again, a lot of it is, say Greg right now, during his COVID experience or during the pandemic, quarantine, has basically written, enough material for another album, so, we can almost go through this in real time. So, next weekend he's going to be available again for practicing to get together. And, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to listen to, what he's got in his bag. And
so he's written the lyrics.
Well,
he writes the music.
He's
both.
A little bit of both. Okay. Yeah, I mean, he's also a guitar. He's a singer-songwriter. So he'll have generally some basic lyrics or some phrases, vocal phrases, some harmonies and some melody, and then he'll also have some guitar phrases and chorus rhythms and verses, ideas of what's going on there. And I'll sit down with those. Sometimes he and I'll often not jam, but we will like feed off of each other. He'll just bring in like just a very simple riff, and then we'll kind of like first I'll get into a spot where it's like, okay, this is a good accompaniment for it, and then after that, we'll like, okay, well now what can I do? How can I kind of like dance around this maybe a little bit? Can I what can I add to it? So kind of like almost a slave to the song in a way. So we hear these things, and then maybe I'll do something that'll inspire him to take it in a different direction, and
do you just remember, or do you record those sessions?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
We've gotten to the point where because we can only get together maybe once a week or every couple weeks, it's definitely beneficial to record it just so that we have some kind of reference material for a document of it. Oh, that's a musician, like I think a very common experience is getting into like this zone.
There you go.
And then completely lose it, like forgetting it, and not being able to get it back, So it is very important, if you want to make sure you capture those things or remember them down the road, because
you're out of time and space.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's not even like I'm behind the wheel. It's not me. It's like I almost feel like something is like channeling. You know what I mean? Like it's there's a lot of different theories of music. That is it something you're creating or something? I mean, obviously you're creating it, but are those thoughts vessel. Being yes, just kind of exactly vehicle for that to come through. We're picking those those things up from outside of ourselves.
Especially where there might be the outside, but there's two or more vessels. And so to record it, because you can't be in that space again.
Right.
So to be able to at least pick up a little bit of. Remind yourself.
Right. Well, that's it, because your time. It could be just a simple flick of the wrist that completely changes the mood or the phrase or whatever it may be. That if you forget that, and it doesn't come back to you, it's never the same.
And you're just longing for it.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of my fellow musicians, friends, and stuff like that can relate to that. We've almost I've probably forgotten more than we've ever written.
Absolutely.
We've sat around in our bedrooms or in studios and stuff like that, or been sitting in the shower, I've probably written like, you know, an encyclopedia of music, like while standing in the shower thinking about it, but then by the time I dry off,
you're like half of what you get out, you're actually dripping wet. You gotta run out of the shower.
I was actually thinking about that the other day. I was like, I need to set up like some kind of
a whiteboard in there,
like like some kind of a recording device in the shower, so I can.
They make those. Or you should.
Waterproof. You know, that's next idea.
Record your thoughts. Record all your great moments of, because I mean showers are often one of the places where we just everything else can go away a little bit. Plus we're being soothed by water.
Sure.
I mean, not me really, because I do the cold showers, but I can imagine.
That's nuts.
It is nuts.
I tried it for just a little bit.
It's not good for your creative process.
No, not so much.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, you know, writing, so once we really come up with, you know, these are the contenders, you know. These are the ones that are going to move forward. The elimination, you know, the first elimination round of you know, riffs and you know, chord progressions or harmonies or whatever it may be. With Greg and I, it's like we like to do that ourselves a little bit first before we really take it to the rest of the members.
Sure.
And once we've got, you know, a piece that we're both really, you know, gelling together on, and it's like, okay, let's bring in, you know, percussion, you know, let's bring in, you know, keys, horns. What are we hearing next? You know, do we have any ideas on it ourselves? And then but generally, whenever I'm in a band, I don't like to dictate what other people play exactly. I mean, it's like, okay, well, this is the chord progression. This is the way it kind of, you know, this is the feel of it. This is, you know, let that person kind of autonomously, you know, have some autonomy.
So now you invite other cooks into the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then they get to add their ingredients, and that's when the songs start to round out and complete.
Yeah, absolutely. Fill them out, you know. And because I feel that people, you know, if you're in a band or if you're creating it, you have that, you know, liberty, you know, to create it yourself. You're not just a hired gun, just basically replicating what somebody else already, you know, created or wrote. And there's a lot of musicians that's where they're at. That's where they like to be, you know, with their instruments. They're not there. They're trained, you know, music, you know, and
hired guns.
Yeah, you know, schooled and a lot of things like, and that's what they do. They go into, you know, recording studios. They do professional, you know. Obviously, they're probably making a living off it, where I'm not. Like I said, I just flying by the seat of my pants here. Really.
Pretty soon you'll be doing all those things, and I predict you will be doing it for a living.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've been, kind of developing, you know, my abilities, you know, and cultivating my abilities, you know, to do more and more, you know, from beginning to the production. And so once the rest of the band comes in, you know, and you know, we add the rest of the, you know, instruments or whatever it may be, then it's, you know, let's think about getting into the studio to record. And you know, once you do that, there's also a kind of a pre-recording process, you know, that is good, because a lot of times you can be playing the song, but you're not playing the same song as everybody else. They come to find out until you really, because you're hearing different things, you know, as all the instruments are playing. You know, and and that's why it's good to have like a recording device there also, because what you hear in your head isn't always exactly what's going on.
Okay, that's interesting. When I'm working on a piece, especially if it's, you know, I mean, they're always 3-dimensional, but more of a wall piece, and I can't figure something out, I'll take a picture of it, or even a picture upside down, and look at it, and right away I'll be like, oh, I want to change that, or I'll add something. you're hearing it, but you're
Mhm.
hearing it different, probably because you're not playing it, specifically in it. So you'll listen to it, and then you guys will be able to adjust.
Right.
And you'll take care of that before you go into the recordings.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if there's a note that you're just a little off on, there's a latency thing. Sometimes latency, kind of having like a swing to, what you're playing is good. It can create tension, or
sometimes it's not the tension you're
but
looking for.
Right, yeah. Sometimes, how you attack, the strings, how percussive they are, or, like sometimes a downstroke on a string is going to sound better than, like a up and down picking. And it's going to have a different shape. With sound, we're really we're rearranging air and molecule, you know what I mean? It's like we're sound technicians, sound engineers, like when you're behind a speaker and you're pushing it out, you're changing the waves and the shape and the molecules all around you, that's in the air, and solids, you're pushing on them, and you're it's a force, you know what I mean? You're exerting a force, through the sound. So it's like, to me, I also feel like I have a responsibility, not to play stuff that's absolute crap.
Right. Not absolute crap. So this is really exciting, and what jumped into my head right now with the technology is the ease at which you can probably change things. And I know I'm projecting my craft onto this too, because I really, have been diving into the manipulation of art, so I can change it quickly, even moving art. But now with what you've done during quarantine, with learning, a lot more electronic and all that software.
Oh yeah.
It does kind of drive you nuts, though, doesn't it? Like, because you can perfect it forever. But it's really cool too at the same time, because obviously it's an and, not a but. Because we can just try something really quick and like, oh no, we liked it the way before. We just take that layer away, or switch it back, or add or subtract.
Yeah, like I said, leave it more, raw or whatever it may be, not overly processed and stuff. But yeah, with the technology, a lot of times it's almost like I said, it's more like engineering and architecture. Now, with most of our recording programs, you can see, the sound wave.
Okay.
You can see the shape of, of that signal, what you're putting in there. Right, and then you can, put it under a microscope and like enlarge it, and you can see exactly where on the meter or the time frame it's landing. And like I said, it can spiral out of control. Yeah. To a certain degree.
Do you feel like sometimes you lose the art in there, your music in there, or you're just
I look at it as
a
totally different approach to it. With playing guitar and bass or drums, I kind of like that like a little bit sloppy.
Like hearing the scratch of the record.
Yeah, it's it gives a little bit more human element or something to it, to me. Like if it's just like spot on perfect, it sounds like a mechanical. I like getting on stage, you're saying, like, between the practicing process and all this stuff, but then when the whole idea is that, like, when you get up on stage for us, it seems like is that
it's just totally different than
it's just pedal to the metal, you know what I mean? Just like it's all out, just you know what I mean? And you're not thinking about it anymore. At that point, you get up on stage and it's like you've done the practice, you got the muscle memory and all this stuff, and now you can just physically just like let yourself
and now you're
go
into that
into
groove flow,
right,
hive mind.
And, next thing you know, this guy's running over here doing this or that, or you never know, you know what I mean? And then it's like, you get up on stage and it's like, what's gonna happen?
Yeah, now it's fun again.
Right.
Yeah.
It's go time. It's like we're gonna have this little explosion, of energy in our in everything that we've worked on, and we're the bands that I'm in are obviously, we're physically not athletic.
Yeah.
They're athletic bands. We like to move around a lot.
Okay.
But that's the music we're creating. That's the environment that we like to create. Just like stimulating. To create this like stimulating, band and audience, dynamic to
interactive. Yeah, and you guys are both. There's an enthusiasm.
Where it's like if you're at like a symphony or something like that, you don't want people like jumping off of the stage and trying stage diving and stuff. So it's more about composure and things like that.
Right.
Like for us, I think it's just like almost it's like an excuse to completely throw all that out the window.
Be expressive, let the steam out, whatever the phrase may be. So tell us all a little bit about, we're coming out of this Chrysalis right now. What is this interim gonna look like? I know that you're doing virtual shows now, so I think that would be a good place to.
Yeah, it's kind of going to, next month, or actually a couple of weeks, we're going into X-Ray Arcade to record and film, or video. I'm never sure which what I'm supposed to use. We're not using film anymore. I guess it would just be we're gonna video.
We just say that.
And we're not gonna video. We're not gonna videotape anything because there's no tape there either anymore.
We're going to digitally capture.
There you go. Our performance there, and we're going virtual. I think we all hope that this isn't gonna last too much longer. Or we can all get out and have large gatherings and stuff like that. But for now, it's just like, baby steps, I guess, kind of reintroducing ourselves back into the physical and, virtual world. What I think is kind of cool is that, now these venues, which were just live, performance centers of sorts, now went ahead and invested in what it takes to broadcast, these types of shows. So I think ultimately whoever did that, now has a little bit more of an advantage.
Absolutely.
Down the road, because so we're expecting that live performances are going to be, a reality again, back in, reintroduced back into our lives.
Sure.
And, obviously some people are still doing it, and there's not a huge issue with it. I mean, it seems to be getting better, in some regions anyway. And, but those people are also going to have the ability to, record those shows and diversify, their abilities and what they can do with their, their locations, with their venue, with their stages. Now they can, maybe a band still doesn't necessarily isn't comfortable with it. Not all the members are comfortable with playing live. But maybe they'll still have an option to do that, go in and record so they can still feel like they're playing, and they're with their bandmates and they still have that, kind of connectivity and family or whatever that drives them as
options.
Absolutely.
Nice.
So that's cool.
How can people find you? Like, what is the Size 5s on Facebook, correct?
Yeah, size 5s and Panic on Panic are on Facebook.
Okay.
And we also,
So
we
if
both,
you want to stalk Ryan.
yeah, we both have
Bands, that's awesome.
Bandcamp pages
Okay.
where all the music is available there. And size 5s would be on Reverb Nation. We also have Instagram accounts.
Okay.
And Twitter also. I think one opened up a Twitter account. Yeah, he has for size 5s. Pretty sure it's just size 5s.
But as shows and virtual things happen, they'll be posted probably on Facebook and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll link also I compiled, I think I sent that to you, your new kind of work, which is the soundtrack with the art.
Oh, right. And I
sort
have
of as a meditation. So I'll link that in the description too. But I think I'm excited. I mean, I think you're coming out of this with a whole new, you've added to your arsenal.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
You've built up a lot of energy. You're coming out. My perception is you're coming out stronger even than when you went in.
Well, thank you.
Really strong.
Right. Well, like I said, as a certain version of myself.
Right.
That was myself then. Which was great. But like I said, now it's like I've basically developed this other skill. Or I'm beginning to. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just starting to develop that. I did that piece for you, which is on SoundCloud. But yeah, like I said, I can hear things like, oh, I probably could have worked on that.
Yeah.
Maybe mix this a little bit
That'll
better.
be the
Did
next
this
version, right?
right?
Yeah.
So it's continue to go further and farther, with it, and then who knows what will come next? What I'll be applying it to. Instead, possibly custom soundtracks for wellness centers, people's own wellness centers or things like that, where I could go in there and see if I could, pick up anything in particular, certain frequencies, almost like, okay, I want this and I want it to be in these frequencies, healing or energizing, or a piece for this or that,
How about intros for podcasts? Would you consider that?
Why do you have it? It just so happens I have all of my recording equipment.
Now just watch, everyone. The next podcast will have this amazing intro because he was put on the spot. I'm excited. I think it'll be great because you do have, obviously you have, the sound aesthetic ear, but you listen to people, and you notice what's going on, whether it's with your band on a stage, clients at work, or listening to the stuff I throw at you or whatever. I think I have observed you being very observant and almost just taking notes and saying, okay, how can this be tweaked? So I think that, that branch of your musical career will be really successful.
Well, I hope so. I'm going to hold you to it now.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll be your number one client. All right, look at this. We're gonna look at that one there. So this is 6 feet apart. You can't tell. 4 feet is the new 6 feet, people. So we're coming out of this. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks
fun.
for listening, everyone.
Yep.
What would you say if I wasn't recording that whole thing?